think we can all agree that the show SpongeBob SquarePants is a relatively iconic show, and rightfully so. The show, out of all others on Nickelodeon, not only managed to become one of the most popular cartoons on Nick, but also managed to become the main icon of the program itself. Like Mickey Mouse with Disney, SpongeBob is the one show icon that'll likely continue to keep on thriving for years to come. However, that's not to say that the show hasn't had its own fair share of problems. You see, in order to keep up with supply and demand for the show when it was first starting to get extremely popular, the main higher-ups and the like at Nickelodeon basically started to go down a path that heavily affected the staff and employees of the studio that worked on the show, in a very mostly psychological way, but it was bad. Basically, what wound up going on was that they had to do a lot. They had to do longer hours, they wound up receiving less pay for the same work that they were doing, and many deadlines that had to be met continuously racked on the minds of everyone working on the show. Anytime anyone would attempt to either try and put a stop to the abuse entirely that Nickelodeon was dashing out, or at the very least try and whistleblow this company, the person who would, at the very least, be fired on the spot and blacklisted from the animation industry permanently. Or, at the very worst, would have their entire lives ruined and their complaints completely silenced so that no word ever got out of the treatment that went on at Nickelodeon. This all wound up coming to a head, as much this tends to do, as the episode Geeks started its production. I doubt I really need to even remotely refresh anybody about that in episode, due to how iconic it is. But for those of you who do need it, here's a small summary. The episode is about Squidward getting a call from his rival Squidward Squilliam Fancyson, and he has to try and set up a band within a couple of days in order that the Bubble Bowl could be played out next week. However, instead of getting any kind of positive results from recruiting everybody at Bikini Bottom, everything pretty much starts crumbling down in a variety of comedic and wacky ways. However, just as Squidward is about to give up on the whole thing and claim that everyone, quote, died in a marching accident, SpongeBob, after seeing Squidward distraught, gave a rather touching speech to everyone about how this was extremely important for Squidward and they had to do everything that they could to make him proud. Which in the end, they all do by playing one of the best songs on the show, Sweet Victory, thus giving Swilliam a heart attack, and ending with Squidward pretty much the happiest he could even be. Now try and think a little bit about what this episode would have been like had it been made during the season 6 and 8 train wreck. It most likely would not have ended well, and likely would have been considered one of the more hated episodes on the planet. Of course, as we all know, this thankfully never happened, and the episode is, well, exactly as it is, still awesome as it is. However, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of issues going around with the staff and the crew and the like. And the episode, after it was revealed after that it was going to be what it was going to be about and the song that was going to be made to be included in the episode, pretty much had everyone pretty much just stop. Well, okay, maybe not stop, but many of the animators and the staff and crew working on the show pretty much were completely and utterly fed up of everything, and decided that they would do everything in their power to try and ruin this episode in the most discreet way possible. While nobody at the studio can really pinpoint who exactly started up this whole thing with this episode, but one thing was for certain is that it didn't exactly take too long for the project itself to be found out and quickly shut down. How exactly did this happen? Well, apparently a few staff and crew members that were originally working on the episode itself, the alternate ones, actually kind of chickened out and immediately ratted out a few of the dissenters who were working on the project in order to try and keep their jobs, which they did. Now, the only reason why anybody at the studio even remotely knows about the content of this episode was because of the way that the higher-ups at Nickelodeon decided to punish the people who were involved in making this project. And that was to have the people in the conference room in front of everybody there, voice actors, writers, other animators, and the like, and then have them list off what they were going to be doing to the episode, and making sure that they gave as much detail as possible. Basically, it was a form of public shaming, if you even really want to call it that, that would ultimately add to the embarrassment of the individuals, and in their own words, keep anybody else from sitting there and coming up with another stupid idea like that. And yes, for anybody wondering, the employees that worked on it were blacklisted and fired on the spot right after the meeting itself. As for the episode, it really wasn't anything that particularly different. Actually, no, that's a lie. It is rather different in parts. However, in order to keep myself from repeating parts of the episode that you've all already known about, here's basically a simple little list and summary of what basically contrasted with the original episode of Band Geeks. Number 1. At the very start of the episode, with Squidward getting a call from Squilliam notifying him about the situation that he was going through, instead of the conversation only lasting for just a short while, the scene is extended for at least 3 full minutes. And in these 3 minutes, Squilliam continues to berate and belittle Squidward about how he can't do it, and that he'll always be a failure, and how he'll never get out of his fast food job and be normal like the rest of us. This results in Squidward pretty much nearly losing his mind. Before or after Squilliam's final insult, he finally snaps and tells Squilliam off in the same way that the episode, well, was, with him saying that he does have the band and that he will play at the Bubble Bowl, which the rest of the scene ultimately plays out normally after that. Number 2. During the duration of the practice that Squidward is attempting to actually get some help from the citizens of Bikini Bottom ready for the Bubble Bowl, there is much more argumentation and bickering that only continues to grow in the episode. And while this still technically is a part of the episode, but more in a milder sense, this series of scenes only, well, the main change, however, with this specific scene was that every time there'd be an argument, which there were plenty of in this version of the episode, a good chunk of the fish, and other characters as well, would leave the building and proceed to never come back. Thus, the amount of people practically wind up dwindling down, smaller and smaller, until there was barely at least 15 people in the, well, band practice place. Number 3. After Squidward's downtrodden speech after a huge fight that broke out in the last remaining Bikini Bottomites, SpongeBob attempted to sway everybody into working harder at becoming better at whatever it is that they were doing, even going as so far to sit there and go out to people's houses and the like to try and recruit other fish who have already left to, well, hopefully sit there and actually help out. However, despite SpongeBob's good intentions, nobody either bothers to take what SpongeBob says seriously, or they pretty much try to an extent, but then they just pretty much stop caring afterwards. That is, until SpongeBob winds up losing his mind and proceeds to snap at everybody for being, in his own words, disgustingly selfish and cruel in a very out-of-character tone of voice. This, of course, in turn winds up having everybody, rather begrudgingly that was still there, listening to SpongeBob, and, like with the rest of the scene, it continues on going. Number 4. The last change, and one of the more major changes to the episode, involved the final editing of the episode with the few characters in Squidward, as well as Squilliam in the Bubble Bowl itself. However, once Squidward finishes his countdown, the scene, instead of panning out to start playing Sweet Victory, would only have everybody playing their instruments in various ways and forms. Horribly done, without grace, even cracking the dome itself a bit, letting water and everything leak out onto the place. In turn, this would ultimately cause the entire crowd of people to start booing and throwing stuff at the dome. Many of them actually leaving the stadium because of how bad the entire show was. This, of course, would cause Squidward to have a bit of a mental breakdown before falling to the ground, basically bawling his eyes out. Squilliam, however, would provide no remote form of comfort, and would only jump up on the stage part that Squidward was on, and then proceeds to laugh at him repeatedly and make fun of him in a more cruel manner than what he did originally, basically kicking Squidward while he was down. And then after that, the episode would basically end with Squidward being insulted as much as he did, as the other characters continue on playing awfully on their instruments, and basically the entire stadium itself being completely and utterly empty afterwards. It's honestly a really good thing, though, that something like this didn't officially get made. I mean, heck, there really wasn't even any kind of completed scripts with the alternate episode, which again was a very good thing. Although, there was one positive thing that did wind up coming out of this whole situation. Despite the fact that people were ultimately fired because of the situation, the staff and crew, after really thinking about it a lot, actually wound up treating the staff a lot nicer after this, especially given the fact that they weren't treated too well. Main reason they did this was because, well, they didn't want something worse coming out in the near future. And even if it means them sitting there and having to suck up and be nice, well, that's exactly what they were willing to do. And as for the episode itself, it basically faded off into nothingness. The scripts, as far as I'm concerned, were completely and utterly destroyed. Why? Not really sure. There's no video footage or anything else like that. It was just a concept that started off and just never had the opportunity to actually become an actual episode. But again, that's a good thing. It really is. Because who honestly would have known what SpongeBob would have wind up going through, or going down, if the alternate episode itself had actually been aired to televisions all around the world.
In fear and surprise as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.